the most poignant phrase or articulation around the concept and the law. Genocide is both an idea, a concept, and an international human rights law and a treaty. If you kill one person, it is considered homicide, a murder, an act of murder. But if you kill 2 million people, you get away with it. What we have been seeing in the Middle East, the invasion of Iraq, what is happening in Syria, essentially, uncountable number of lives have been lost as the direct result of policies made in Washington or London or Brussels or whatever these powerful capitals may be. But both governments, heads of states, and perpetrators like troops on the ground have gotten away with killing large numbers of humans. And not just killing. And here's the trick. I will get to the substance of the Rohingya persecution in a minute. But I want to crack the misunderstanding surrounding genocide. The tricky part of genocide, well, there are actually two parts. One is the popular and media, i.e. journalists, misperception about genocide. When someone utters the word genocide, we immediately think of the Holocaust, the killing fields of Khmer Rouge, or Rwanda, where large numbers of people were killed within a decade, within several months. In the case of Holocaust, close to 6 million were killed from 1933 onward until 1945. That's 12 years. And in the case of killing fields, that's the popularized version of the Cambodian Pol Pot's genocide. 2 million people perished in a span of 3.5 years, 1973 to 75, 76, I think. And then, in the case of Rwanda, 1994, it's only 20 years ago, an estimated 800,000 people were killed or destroyed in a span of 3 or 4 months. These are large-scale killings. We immediately assume that if we say genocide, the scope of the killings has to reach the level of Holocaust. It has to be 6 figures. It has to be millions, in the millions. That's wrong. But that is the most dominant perception among those who do not study genocide or who do not really look into what genocide really means. There are 5 acts of genocide in total, according to the UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, adopted in 1948, so way before we were born. And there were many governments and countries that signed the Genocide Convention. This Genocide Convention is not a resolution. It is a treaty. It is binding. And even if a member state of the UN that is committing or commissioning the crime of genocide against a people on the basis of their faith, ethnicity, their nationality, and their racial background. So there have to be 4 different groups. If one of the groups, ethnic, national, racial, and religious group, is subject to acts of genocide, even if the perpetrating member state is not a signatory to the Genocide Convention. The accusations and the credible allegations of genocide is supposed to trigger an international intervention in that state. You don't need consent of the given UN member state to allow international community to come in and intervene. I don't mean just like bombing that country or sending troops, to stop it. But there are a number of different possibilities of intervention to stop a crime of genocide. And finally, there are 5 acts of genocide which need to be understood. One is direct killings. That's obvious. That is the most obvious act of genocide. And the other one is causing mental and physical harm to a particular community simply because that community happens to be Muslims or Jews or Indonesians or Hindus, Christians, whatever. So as long as the victim community fits a profile of those 4 categories: ethnic, racial, national, and religious, and they are being destroyed, they are being harmed, they're being gang raped, they're being attacked on the streets, even if they're not killed, simply because they exist, and they exist with their identity. And that's second act of genocide. And the third act of genocide is the attempt to control the population growth of that particular community, with the intent of making sure the population no longer exists in due course. In other words, it's not killing, it's the attempt to destroy the entire community by different means. That is why we need to go beyond genocide understanding, beyond the image of Holocaust. And then the other one is deliberate attempt to create conditions of life that are designed to destroy the community. And then those deliberate attempts are simply denial of access to food, denial of access to clean water, denial of access to medical services, emergency care, denial of food, denial of aid, denial of essential services that sustain life. So genocidal act doesn't have to involve pulling the triggers or stabbing members of the group. You can deprive a particular community of life-supporting services, and that is considered genocidal act. And that is actually one of the most crucial acts of genocide that is being perpetrated by my own government in Burma. And then the last one, the fifth one, is the forcibly transferring children of that group to another group in order to essentially alter the identity of the new generation of that member. And Australia did that in the 1920s, I believe. Large numbers of Aborigines children were kidnapped using military force and trucks from the Aborigines communities right before their parents' eyes. They were snatched by white Australian troops, and then they were put in camps, schools, to erase their Aborigines identity. And so these are 5 acts. And out of the 5 acts, the Burmese military government has been accused of committing the first four act, except transferring children from Rohingya community to other communities, because we don't even bother transferring the children and imposing a new identity. We just throw them onto the burning houses, or force them onto the boats. Back in May this year, the international news was for a while saturated with the stories of Rohingyas, floating and being adrift in the South China Sea, in Andaman Sea. Some of them reached the shores of Indonesia, and in Aceh, fishermen in Aceh. Indonesian government wasn't that supportive, wasn't that compassionate, but fishermen in Aceh found, boatloads of refugees. We're talking about thousands. About 10,000 of them went any direction in search of safety, because they were presented with, essentially, they were faced with two bad choices. One was stay on inland and allow the Burmese government and local, in quotes, Buddhist Rakhine group to blockade, to starve them on land in their own communities. Or the other is to get on the boat that could only hold, say, 500 people. Be over 1,000 or more would get on boats. They would sail away any direction. They would reach Thailand. Thailand Navy would give them, a bucket of drinking water and maybe 2 gallons of gasoline, and then a few bags of rice, push them back into the sea. Yeah? And then some of the Rohingyas on the boats, when they asked for food, the human traffickers would slash them, beat them, abuse them. Yeah? And if they protest, they would be slashed here, or simply get thrown, into the ocean. And several thousand died, and some who reached Aceh, they have been cared for by the local communities over there. And my